Hey everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show. I'm ready just to move into this because this show was my suggestion, and because I may not know the answer to some of this stuff, and I've been trying to make some trades, and I've been getting some mixed answers. And when that's the case, I ask smart people, and that guy's a smart guy, so we're gonna see how this goes. Russ Fisher, Dynasty at House, Addison Hayes at Amaze Hayes _ DLF Trade Show, DLF YouTube channel, Trade Finder, Trade Analyzer. Yay, good stuff. But we're talking about the rookie wide receivers that came in. And more or less the higher end wide receivers. Don't get me wrong. I could talk about David Bell for an hour, even though he's done literally nothing this entire season. Don't care. Love that guy. But we are going to talk about the topper tier. Nice. Rock on. Going strong in the beginning. The top tier kind of guys. And we're going to start with Drake London, who was a lot of people's wide receiver one. Pretty sure you.
Yes.
So before we get into the actual trades, how do you feel about Drake London right now? How do you feel about his value now compared to what it was at the beginning of the season after those first two games where he did pretty well? And how do you feel it's going to go after this season?
He has been, so his value started rising, I think, in August, where we started seeing training camp plays. He was looking like the alpha. We saw him in some preseason action. First couple of games, he starts ascending. People were talking about him as a top 10 dynasty wide receiver after week 2. That's obviously cooled a bit. The Falcons offense
has cooled a bit.
Weird. They're still in playoff contention, which I don't know, depending on if you're a Falcons fan or not, is probably either good or bad. But they're just not throwing the ball. But I feel like what we've seen from Drake London early on in the season and from the limited work that he's had over the past month or so, he still looks like a very, very good wide receiver that we want to have on our dynasty rosters. And we just kind of need to weather the storm of whatever this Arthur Smith offense is. It's kind of the same thing with Kyle Pitts. I feel like I've seen enough Drake London to know that he is a very good wide receiver in the NFL. So but he's turned into an asset right now that I think has a lot of dynasty value because of that, but he's not producing points. So he's become kind of a favorite for contenders who have him to be able to move him off for actual production right now at a pretty decent cost.
Yeah, and we're about to see that with some of the trades we're going to talk about. But real quick, I'm doing one QB mock for the DLF ADP, and he was wide receiver 14, taken at the 303. All right, so let's get into the trades. And I don't think I get behind this first one. Let's talk about it, though. 12-team, 1 quarterback, Drake London and Brian Robinson for DK Metcalf. Drake London, 634. Brian Robinson, 109. Total of 743. DK by himself, 607. So what you're telling me is Drake London's not scoring points. I'll add Brian Robinson, who isn't really scoring points either, to go get DK Metcalf. I don't get the idea of going from DK Metcalf, who is actually worth less than Drake London, which I greatly disagree with, just by adding Brian Robinson on top.
Yeah.
To me, this should be DK should be over Drake London, and Brian Robinson should not bridge that gap.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what else more to say about that one, but I just thought this was interesting. This was I think this was the first trade in the trade finder today, happened yesterday. And I was just like, oh, kind of interesting. So
yeah, see, I really like this because it's not always easy to see the players, these rookies, with one-for-one comparisons with other players in the same position. So this is pretty much saying Drake London sort of equals DK Metcalf, because Brian Robinson by himself isn't worth much. So we can't really count that as an addition. It's like a throw-in just to make it happen. But I like this happening because, like I said in the very beginning of this, I don't have the answer on all of these, but this is helping because, to me, DK Metcalf over Drake London.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I feel like there's an argument that they should be similar. They, at least preseason, I made the argument before the season started, back when Geno Smith was bad, that that these two players are in very similar situations overall.
Yeah.
Like they should be pretty alpha wide receivers in bad offenses, but I believe that both of them are good. You just kind of have to weather the situation. And
But the real
then
difference is
Geno Smith is now good.
not even that, because I remember this, and the thing was, we both said they'll both be the ones getting all the target, most of their targets, because Seattle is going to be like 50-50 between Lockett and DK, and Atlanta is going to be 50-50 between London and Pitts. Except, while that isn't even necessarily true in Atlanta, even if it was 50-50, 50% of 4 is still only 2.
The target share, though.
Yep. This next one I love. This is a Trade Addicts trade, and we talked about this on the show last night. So 12-team Superflex, Drake London and a 23 third for DeAndre Hopkins and a 23 second. Now, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that Drake London is valued more than DeAndre Hopkins. And this is a rebuilding team getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins for Drake London from a scoring team, competing team, getting DeAndre Hopkins. And I loved this trade for the reason that if you have someone like Hopkins on your team and you are rebuilding, don't be afraid to add the better pick to make the move that's better for your team. I know it's in a lot of people that, like, I'm building, I can't get rid of picks. I can't give up a second and get a third back. You can, because the points Hopkins is scoring, and he's scoring a lot of them, are doing you no good. They're actually probably most likely doing you harm, because assuming you are not allowed to full on tank, it's in your lineup scoring points, which could move you up the standings when you just want to stay at the bottom. Drake London has the opposite, where he has a lot of value, but he's not scoring a lot of points. So this is the perfect player you want on a rebuild. So adding that second, honestly, like, even without getting the third back, I'd have been fine with this. But getting a third back makes it even better. I didn't give the numbers yet. Drake London, 540. A third is worth 49 for a total of 589. DeAndre Hopkins, 223. A second is 134 for a total of 357. So, yeah, this sounds very in favor of London, but I think in real life this is insanely fair.
If it were me and I was selling off Drake London, I would prefer a 24 first instead of a 23 second. That would just be, I feel like the analyzer kind of agrees with that would basically
there is the chunk difference. There's the 230 point difference here.
Right. So I think that little difference would be nice, but I get that, if you don't want to give it the first, blah, blah, blah. I feel like if that were then the answer, like if Hopkins and a first for London isn't the answer, I would rather turn towards someone who is still producing really well, like Hopkins, but just like a little bit younger. Like, maybe can I get to Tyreek Hill? Can I get to Stephon Diggs? Can I, I would be fine adding to London if I had to go that route rather than kind of breaking him up for cheaper production from Hopkins, but I'm getting a second, not the first. I just feel like there are different ways to get the production without going to the 30-year-old wide receiver, and you're not getting a first back. But at the end of the day, if it's this or nothing, and you're that far along in competing, I feel like you kind of have to do that. But I prefer the first.
Yeah, clearly. See, to me, 540 feels like a lot for Drake London right now, because that 540 is so much perceived hold and wait value, which Dynasty's turned into very what have you done for me lately, even though, again, it's supposed to be the long game. Like, I want to believe this season is going to end. Atlanta's going to get a quarterback. They're going to open up an offense, and Pitts and London are going to be awesome. They're winning. Why would they ever change?
On the flip side of that, they win their division. They have the 19th overall pick. Arthur Smith is still there. They go into another season with Marcus Mariota because that 19th pick doesn't net them a quarterback. And we're in the same boat again next year.
Either that or it's just another bridge quarterback that most likely, or they trade for Aaron Rodgers. Who the hell knows? Like, But even that might not be great anymore. That might be the next Matt Ryan to the Colts, and then he gets benched for Felipe Franks. Is that the guy that was playing wide receiver and he was drafted as a quarterback? Because and with the points Hopkins is scoring, I get his dynasty value is never going to be that much, but it's also the Thielens and the Boyds and all of these other players where their dynasty value will never match their production. But trade-wise, you still kind of need to pay to get that. So I feel like those two things put together makes this fairer, whichever is the right English, than the analyzer shows. Let's move on to a guy that I have tried over the past few days to gain a couple of shares of and have gotten shot down everywhere. I was hoping I was a little ahead of it. Like I was hoping people wouldn't have noticed yet, but I'm apparently just way late. Garrett Wilson, who ever since the past 2 games with no Breece Hall has 17.5 points per game. It was 14 targets, 12 receptions for a little over 200 yards. The crazy thing is he is wide receiver 24 right now. He only has 2 touchdowns on the season. And the more annoying thing was they were in the same game. Like you couldn't even spread that love out. Second game of the season, 2 touchdowns, hasn't scored a touchdown since. I offered, what was it, Amon-Ra St. Brown for Garrett Wilson and a second. I got rejected fast. And I was told that they are pretty much worth the exact same thing. And his counter to me was Garrett Wilson and Jelani Woods for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And in my head, I'm like, well, I'm not going to do them straight up. So I'm not doing this for Jelani Woods. Exactly like Brian Robinson doesn't make a difference. Jelani Woods makes less of a difference. And I was told, I tried Michael Pittman for Garrett Wilson in a second. I was told that someone might actually like Garrett Wilson more than Michael Pittman. I guess maybe with the quarterback situation, but like Zach Wilson ain't the right quarterback situation either.
No.
But like, so yeah, like I am apparently just way too late on the Garrett Wilson train, which makes me sad.
You're about 2 weeks too late because he just started producing 2 weeks ago.
But I was really hoping that people would, because every once in a while when someone does really well, they're like, all right, I wasn't into this guy, but he's scoring, so I could move him now for the right price. And I was sending what I thought was the right price, but apparently this,
you're not high enough.
Nope. Because in a 12-team Superflex league, Garrett Wilson got traded for Travis Kelce and a second. Okay. I'm trying to continue going, but I'm exasperated from the fact that someone added to Travis Kelce, who is the definition of positional advantage, had to add to get Garrett Wilson, who again I think is very good, but
this is like, remember when you were just saying earlier about if you are rebuilding and you have that productive asset and don't be afraid to add that draft pick to make a better move. This is not an example of that because
this
Kelce,
is not that. Like maybe if you were getting a first back, or
sure,
or like if you sent a 24 second and you got a 23 second back, like there needs to be something better than this pick coming back to you, and there is nothing coming back. Garrett Wilson at 387. Caution: Team B is giving up the highest valued asset and the most pieces in the deal because Travis Kelce 425.5 and a second is worth 134.3 for a total of 560. No.
If you have Travis Kelce and you are not competing, first of all, it sucks because I don't know how you're
competing.
I was gonna say I don't know how you have the tight end one by no close margin whatsoever, by like 8 points per game, 10 points per game, tight end one, and you're not competing. You had to like that had to have been a team that had like Javonte and Breece Hall and Trey Lance and all that other kind of stuff. And
just hold on to Kelce, you'll be great next year.
Well, there is that, but if you are thinking about selling Kelce at this point because you're not competing, a contender should be willing to sell about 3/4 of their farm to acquire Travis Kelce.
So I'm an idiot. This is not news. And in one of my Trade Addicts leagues, in Trade Addicts 8, which I have found a way to hate my team every single season. And I did an outhouse challenge, which, again, if you don't know, every trade that gets offered to me, I put it as a poll on Twitter. If the side being offered to me wins the poll, I accept the trade. So I tell the league I'm doing this. I got about 6 just pure crap offers. And then I get someone who sent me Jonathan Taylor for Travis Kelce.
Oh, no.
And I literally just go...
That's the one. You lost him.
So Jonathan Taylor won the poll 68 to 32. I think that's math. So I get Jonathan Taylor on my team, and I'm no longer competing because Travis Kelce is now off my team. But it took Jonathan Taylor to get Travis Kelce off my team. It should take more than Garrett Wilson. Okay, let's move on to this next one, which is... I love this. All right, so this is pure rebuilding versus competing, and I think this is great. Though I haven't actually looked at the value, I just looked at what was going on. Garrett Wilson and a 23 first for Devontae Adams, George Kittle, and David Montgomery. Oh, never a caution. Team B is giving up the highest value asset and the most pieces in the deal. Let's see how this goes. Garrett Wilson, 387, a 23 first, 384 for a total of 771. Devontae Adams still up there at 510. George Kittle, 287. David Montgomery, 162 for a total of 959. So this is still pretty heavily in favor of the vet players. But I got to be honest. I think I take this and I'm thrilled with it getting Garrett Wilson in a first for these. Because none of these players are going to have a lot of value next year. Mm-hmm. And... George Kittle and Devontae Adams both going to be 30. David Montgomery, the dude never got value. The dude was like the RB3 and still was like came in at ADP at the RB15. Like, and now with Fields, running like a madman, Montgomery will A, loses carries, B, maybe gets more efficient at it, but Khalil Herbert's actually getting some use, which is nice to see. And 19, 20, 21, 22. So his contract is up, I think.
Yes. And I don't think they're yes.
Yeah. So honestly, he's probably a goner. So I think I probably just value everyone on that side less than the analyzer does, but I honestly think it's what I've seen in real life that makes me do it. So give me the 22-year-old wide receiver and the 23 first, which are both, booming assets, to 3 cratering assets. And I'll forgive the 180, the David Montgomery sized difference, because I don't care about giving up a David Montgomery if I'm trying to rebuild anyway, and it gets me Wilson in a first.
Yep. That's honestly exactly how I feel about this as well. Like when I saw this trade originally, I was like, this is a fantastic trade to go get Garrett Wilson in a first, especially like you said, if you're rebuilding. And then I plugged it into the analyzer and I saw that it was almost a 200-point difference between the two sides. And I'm like, man, like,
doesn't feel right.
Like if you just drop every single player about 50 points, that basically negates the difference.
Yeah. And that's what, a third?
A third from everybody. A little
bit more, yeah.
Drop Adams a little bit, drop Kittle because he's like the de facto tight end 3 or 4 because he just has to be there and it doesn't really do anything.
Because if he ever plays, he does pretty well.
And then, like you said, like David Montgomery is a complete unknown after this season as well, if he's even still on the Bears. So I would much rather just take Garrett Wilson in the first and call it a day here, especially because I looked into the league to see where that first currently is, and that team is 4-5. They gave up their own first as 4-5 to try and make a move.
I mean,
to compete.
That's the move, man. You are competing now. I mean,
they are competing, and that's what, to me, if I was the team receiving that first, I'd be sitting there and be like, man, if for some reason that they're taking this bet and it doesn't pan out, they don't make the playoffs. That's a top 5 pick, top 6 pick. even if they do make the playoffs, I'm still betting that they're going to get booted in the first round, and that's now 7 or 8.
There's just so much you can do with Garrett Wilson in the 23 first in a rebuild, as opposed to, it's not like any of them are bad. Like, I want to get that out there. Like, Devontae Adams is freaking amazing. George Kittle, when he's actually on the field, is freaking amazing. David Montgomery is good, but he gets the ball a lot, so it makes him a very good running back for fantasy. Yeah. All right, so this next player I want to talk about is definitely not. He's very good, and what's really weird to me is the Randy Moss, the split on how people see some rookie wide receivers. We had a question on last night's Trade Addicts where someone said that I'll just say the way they said it, they're starting to get frustrated with the fact that there are these young wide receivers who have a lot of perceived value but aren't really producing, like Drake London, like we were saying before. But the two examples they gave in their questions was George Pickens, which right now, absolutely, that is perceived value, but that dude's good. I think it's going to turn into real. But then he said Chris Olave. And the first thing I said after reading that question was, well, that doesn't work because Chris Olave is scoring points. I pulled it up, and I don't think he returns kicks. So this might just be straight PPR because, TA leagues give a little bit for kick returns. Points per game, he's wide receiver 19 at 14.6 points per game. Which is, by the way,
he's 16 overall.
The exact same number as CeeDee Lamb.
Yes.
That's
and he is really the rookie wide receiver 1 in fantasy.
I mean, easily. And that's with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Yeah. I am huge into Chris Olave. I've always been a fan, and as with most people in this draft class, I did not get nearly enough shares because I usually found myself selling out of this draft, except for Treylon Burks. That dude needs to come back and get healthy because I just love that guy. But let's talk about these trades first, and then maybe I'll start complaining about all the times I didn't get Chris Olave or the amount of times I've overpaid for Chris Olave. Chris Olave and a 23 second for Cooper Kupp. Chris Olave, 446.2. This is 12-team Superflex. 23 second, 96 for a total of 542. Cooper Kupp, 678. I love the analyzer respect for Cooper Kupp, by the way. Love it. Because it's not everywhere. This is one of those situations where I think this is the opposite of with London. With London, again, we said it's like perceived value. So to me, like his analyzer score was a little high. 446 is too low. I think Olave should be easily above London because draft capital isn't really different. Scoring is pretty different. Team situation, it's not really all that different. Well, it shouldn't be because the Falcons shouldn't be winning, but the Falcons are winning.
At least the Saints are throwing. That's the difference.
Yeah, and a lot. So, to me, how about this? I just want to flip their scores. Let's put Olave at 540 and drop London down to 446, and I'll feel a lot better about both of them. In which case, we're talking 640 to 679, which I think is super fair to go and do whatever of this side you want. I love being able to move from Olave to Cooper Kupp and not having to pay a first. And I love getting anything on top of Olave if I'm getting rid of Cooper Kupp. So I get that the analyzer, again, has this apart by about 130 points, but I think this is really fair because I might just have Olave a lot higher than he appears to be.
So I wanted to ask you this because I, again, looked up to see where this pick was. The team is currently in first place. They're 8-1. The team that is getting Cooper Kupp is currently 8-1. So that's their second, which today is the 212.
Good for you. You go ensure that win.
I was gonna say so that kind of gave me my answer. Was, to me, I feel like if I'm 8-1, and this kind of goes back into some of the things that I've learned over the past couple of years of trying to make moves to help solidify myself a championship. Is there that much of a difference between Olave and Cooper Kupp on a weekly basis, scoring wise, on a team that's already 8-1, to where your odds of winning the championship drastically change.
It's 10 points a game.
Sure, but like he's gotten there already without Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
You know?
And the Saints have not had their bye yet. So 10 points a game plus a game, you'd be gaining because Kupp had his bye already.
So, yeah. I will say, if there was ever a price to go pay to go get Cooper Kupp, this is absolutely the price that I want to pay to go get.
Yeah, like, and imagine if your team is just so good, Olave wasn't even in your starting lineup, and then you get to insert Cooper Kupp.
I want to see if I can find this dude's roster now. But yeah, I was just curious on kind of what your thought was on that, because I feel like that's one of the moves where if you were to keep Chris Olave, that's something that would help you for the future.
Oh, for sure.
As well as currently. But Cooper Kupp is just like is so much a this year, next year move. Although I'm kind of looking at his team, and I feel like I would have kept Chris Olave.
What is he completely
this team? So it's super flex. So he's got Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence at super flex. No other quarterbacks, I will say.
Who needs him?
His running backs are Etienne and Kenneth Walker. So he's doing well there.
Yeah.
And then Fournette. So Fournette's losing his job. But that's basically it. Then his wide receivers. So I guess he had Olave, but he just swapped Olave for Cooper Kupp, and his wide receiver 2 is Allen Lazard, and his wide receiver 3 is Donovan Peoples-Jones.
No, this dude, like, that's rough.
I don't know how.
Like, does he have like Kelsey and Andrews and Kittle?
And he's got Pat Freiermuth, and likely those are his tight ends.
I got nothing. And why isn't my camera readjusting? That's what I want to know. Like, I've been sitting there trying to get this to. Let's get real close. Huh?
He is. Oh my god. He is 1, 2, 3, 4. He's 5th in points for.
Oh, so we're talking like fantasy randomness. That he is
400 points.
So yeah, that's when you ride it and get Cooper Kupp. Like, ride the wave, take the extra wins, and go start earning yourself some wins.
I'm taking Olave.
Oh no, Olave is
that change
the right answer in this situation.
That change is not making a difference.
Because like next year, when you still have those really young running backs and you have Chris Olave, you could do like it's a really good core of a team. I still don't hate it. It's not like Cooper Kupp's going to be bad next year.
How to be a pretender and think that you're a contender. Be in first place, but 5th in points for.
All right, so let's look at this next one, which is super interesting. Super interesting. Chris Olave, a late 1st, 2nd, and 3rd for Christian McCaffrey and Travis Etienne. Mm-hmm. Wow. Like, I'm just all right. So the total of the Olave side is 841. The total of the McCaffrey side is 997. If I'm a rebuilding team, like, I wish I could somehow do this without sending away ETN. But the ability, the idea of getting rid of 2 running backs and getting back Olave and a draft of picks, it does feel kind of good. But is ETN not a top 3 running back right now in Dynasty?
Oh, I love it. Top 3, I'm in. Top 5 for sure. 100% top 5.
So, I mean, this might not be enough for me for those 2 players. I mean, the analyzer agrees. It puts it at about 150 points. I think I find something besides the 2nd and 3rd. Put those 2 values together and give me something better that aren't like probably not that aren't picks. Or if I could find a way to get a team, like, you know, you all have a team or 2 like that's going to be the 101. You know, that's going to be the first pick. That's going to most likely be the 202. That's fine. I mean, like, if you got one of those instead of a late, but like I don't feel great about this. Again, even though I love Olave and I love first round picks, if I saw this trade going for just McCaffrey, I don't think I'd be super shocked about it. And that's even with Olave being looked at as a top 10 wide receiver, which he most likely is.
Yep. This is another one where the team is also in first place making a move. So those are all, you could just say 112, 212, 312.
Oh, I would do that in a heartbeat, especially because you're getting a young player back.
Well, do you want me to read off his team?
Well, now that you're smiling like that, yeah, I do.
It's so he has Justin Herbert and Matthew Stafford. And then his running backs are now Christian McCaffrey and Travis Etienne, to go with Aaron Jones and Cam Akers, whatever. His wide receivers, still after trading away Olave, are Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, and Jalen Waddle, and Chris Godwin.
Like, just add CeeDee Lamb and you have like every top wide receiver. You have like the top 5 wide receivers. Man.
And then he's got Hawkin and Njoku at tight end. That's a dynasty team right there.
That's, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, whoever are watching, that is how you build a dynasty team.
Yeah. So that's an easy win, I think, to go get McCaffrey and Etienne. And I agree with you. Like, I feel like Etienne or McCaffrey himself should be worth 2 firsts, especially if one of those firsts is the 112, 111, 112. So I feel like McCaffrey himself should be worth at least 2 firsts. So then
Olave in the first, yeah.
Olave in the first. So then Etienne for the second and the third, or if you want to say McCaffrey is worth all the picks, then Olave for Etienne. Like, whoever traded away McCaffrey and Etienne, you did not get.
I don't think you got enough. Even though, again, it looks really good on your team as a rebuilder, but you still need the value. You don't trade stuff away just to trade stuff away. Like, you need to wait for the right trade to do it. And by the way, I just want to point out there, in that 1 QB mock draft, it's really funny that we just talked about them. My first 2 round picks, I took Cooper Kupp and then Chris Olave on the way back.
Excellent.
So me calling Chris Olave a top 10 wide receiver is absolutely true, because I was thrilled to get him at the 207 as wide receiver 11.
So he's not a top 10 wide receiver.
For me, he is, because I was thrilled he was there, because I was ready to take him, watching it go down. The second T. Higgins went away, I'm like, nobody else do it, nobody else do it, nobody else do it. And then the pick before me was Devontae Adams. I'm just like, yes. All right, we have one more player, and it is someone that we mentioned before when it was one of those players that have a lot of the perceived value but aren't putting up the points, and that is George Pickens. And this is going to be interesting because this is tough. When it's just perceived value, it is so much more on an individual basis what his value really is. Like, it's these players that really prove the point that every league is its own market.
Right.
Because this is going to be very different, and you're going to have to find how you feel and just hope your league agrees that you can get a trade done with it. In a 12-team Superflex league, Devontae Adams for George Pickens and a 24 first. George Pickens, 271, the 24 first, 257 for 528. Devontae Adams, 510. Yeah. I think I like that. Because Pickens is worth a first. Like,
sure.
You're not getting Pickens for less than a first. So 2 firsts for Adams. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I still feel weird about George Pickens. I don't know why. Even as a Steelers fan too. Maybe that's why I like watch him and I'm just like, he just doesn't, like, he makes one fantastic Odell Beckham Jr. catch, but then like he has 2 other catches in the game and he finishes with like 3 for 50 and that's it. So I don't know. Like, it's just,
first of all, I subscribe to the NFL Plus, whatever used to be Game Pass, and the condensed games are awesome. Like, you literally watch a game in like 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it really gives you a lot of perspective. I was watching the Steelers versus the Eagles, and even when Pickett was, I need one of them to get traded, because I will never say the right Pickett or Pickens when I'm trying to talk about the 2 of them together. Ugh. But besides the fact that that offensive line is just so bad that Pickett never has a chance to set his feet and throw a good ball. Watching, even when they were poorly thrown, Pickett on the side, Pickens, see, I did it, on the sideline. He was doing the stuff that made me fall in love with T. Higgins. Watching T. Higgins play and his body control on the sidelines while being able to get his toes down and his hands in a place where he is away or in front of the D-back that's already draped all over him. Like, he was doing the stuff that was just like, yeah, okay, I can get behind this. And I will, like, honestly, the very first highlight I ever saw of him in the NFL was one I will probably never forget. It was a run play. Some guy was press coverage on him. He destroyed this poor defensive back whose career might be over. Like, like the Blind Side, you know, in the movie where he like throws the guy, you know, I want to
say like Derrick Henry stiff arm on
yeah. Like, that's how bad this block was. I'm like, well, that guy is a Steeler for life, because that is the most Steelers thing I've ever seen. Like, so like I'm rooting for Pickens at this point. But what was really weird to see was, first of all, again, putting in how bad this offensive line is. I feel like Pickett has to throw the ball faster than Roethlisberger did, like, all of last year. Like, Roethlisberger didn't hold the ball for 3 seconds, like, once last season. Mm-mm. But what was really weird to see is, and again, something you kind of realize when you're watching the game this fast, Pickens did not have one target over the middle. Everything was on the sidelines. I can't imagine that's real, because the only players that got targeted over the middle were tight ends or running backs.
Like 3 yards downfield.
Exactly. Like, take a step past the defensive lineman, turn around. Like, this isn't a real offense. They are biding their time until they can beef up their offensive line.
Yep. Oh, okay.
So,
I'm gonna be dude, I know it's gonna happen. We're playing our way into a top 3 pick, and younger Stroud is gonna be sitting there, and we're gonna take a freaking defensive end.
So I have been told the best player in this draft is a defensive end, so that'll be good for you guys.
Sure.
Plus, like, look what missing TJ Watt has been. Not the point of the show. So, like, I'm really into George Pickens. I think he will be very good. If anything, he is insanely talented and 21. So I'm not worried about giving up a late first for him, like, generally value speaking.
We still haven't seen him play without Claypool yet either, because they got traded and they were on the bye last week. So we haven't seen this offense without Claypool too. So it could be we have kind of a second half surge for Pickens where he's getting, 8 targets a game and making highlight reel plays, and that's what's going to vault him into being a top 20 dynasty wide receiver by the end of the year.
Oh wow. Okay, so let's go on to the next trade, because this is very similar but the exact opposite, because we're paying up from Pickens not to get the value and not to get the production of Devontae Adams. We're trading George Pickens, a 24 first, 23 second, and Zeke, who is worth less than a 23 second right now, to move up to Amon-Ra St. Brown, which, by the way, I would add a second and Zeke to get to whatever anyway at this point. Do you feel any different about this, because you're not going for that 29-year-old who's producing? You're going for the 23-year-old that isn't producing at the same level, but he's also 23, and they just got rid of Hawkinson, so he's even more of a target than he was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. What really changes this for me is you also added the second and whatever Zeke is. Zeke isn't going to get you a second probably right now, but he's not a 0. Yeah. So there's that. But it's mainly for the second. And like you said, like, Amon-Ra is not producing currently, although we saw him at the very beginning of the season produce like what Devontae Adams is producing right now.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, they just removed TJ Hawkinson. So Amon-Ra has been dealing with a couple injuries here and there throughout the past couple of weeks. So if he were to come out completely healthy and this offense were to start churning again, I think maybe some of that might be due to DeAndre Swift also being out, because Jamal Williams has been producing fine. He's been doing well, but I think they're just missing a little extra something from Swift that they had at the beginning of the year when Amon-Ra was going off.
Yeah.
But at this point, if I'm adding a first and a second to Pickens to go and get a wide receiver that is not who I would consider a strong top 10 guy, like, I'd even put Olave, I think, in this. Like, I wouldn't be trading Pickens over first and second for Olave. I wouldn't be doing it for Michael Pittman. I wouldn't be doing it for Amon-Ra or probably DK even as well. Like, I feel like that package needs to get you to Higgins or Waddle, or if you're going for the production, Cup or Diggs. Like, I feel like that's who you should be aiming for if you're doing Pickens a first and a second, and the extra Zeke spice on top. But yeah, so I'm
Zeke spice.
Yep. So I do prefer the Pickens side on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm with you too. And I do really like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I always get worried about the overcorrection because we went way too high on St. Brown, where DLF ADP had him up to wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
4th overall wide receiver 3. And then, I mean, he's going to probably be close to the 15 to 20 area, I'm guessing.
Yeah, back down to where we have like Godwin and stuff.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, yeah, this is to me easily Pickens. And I'm curious. I'm really, really I want to know the future, but that's cheating and not possible. That's the problem with Dynasty, right? Like the shiny new toy and the hope and dreams you can hold in your hands by trading for those guys. Again, like, I'm glad we did this show. This did give me a lot of perspective. I hope it gave all of you watching a little bit of perspective on how you feel about these as well. Because if not, I don't care, because it worked for me, and that's really why I did this. So sorry. Sorry we wasted your time.
As much as you.
But we are going to call it quits on the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher at Dynasty House, Addison Hayes at AmazeHayes_, and we'll catch you next time.